guys, I picked up a PlayStation Classic the other day for 60 bucks at Best Buy, and I kind of wanted to touch on a couple things. Number one, I want to touch on why I did not pre-order it and did not pick it up initially, and another thing is why am I picking it up now for 60 bucks. I'm going to touch a little bit on like the emulation or the hacking process. I'm not going to be a full hacking tutorial, but I will point you kind of in the direction that I went to get it to work. And at the end, I will also touch on, is it worth it now? Do I think that it's worth it now to pick one of these up for 60 bucks? To get started with, the reason I did not pick it up to begin with was that I just did not like the game lineup, plain and simple. I was a little bit excited at first when it came out and announced it in the first 5 games, and it was not 5 games. That I was like, wow, that's the first 5 games you're going to show. Not games that really are interest to me. I'm not big on RPGs. If you are, maybe it was of interest to you. But I was like, well, I'll have to see the next set of games when it comes out. And it released those, and it just, yeah, there was no way I could justify paying that price for it. I mean, I do collect the classic consoles. I got the NES one. I got the Super Nintendo one. So I kind of was wanting to get it just to, collect. I obviously have a problem. I'm a collector, but I thought it would be cool to also have the PlayStation one as well. I mean, a big PlayStation fan, always have been, but I just could not justify $100 for those games. Another thing is that I don't think that generation of consoles holds up well at all. The PlayStation 1 and N64, I think it's out of all the consoles, that generation I think just holds up the worst. So, I mean, even like the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, that was a lot of 2D style graphics, and they did really well at it by the time the Super Nintendo and the Genesis were done with things. And they were trying to go to 3D modeling, and it was like very innovative, but it was cool at the time, but it just does not hold up and stand the test of time. There are games that do stand up, but I'm saying as a whole, just percentage-wise, I say most of those games don't hold up. So, and I just, nostalgia and all, it just is hard for me to wipe that off and just get excited about that generation of games. So, so I passed. And then when they came in and said that it was going to be, dropped at Christmas time or right after it came out, which was before Christmas time, they dropped it down, I think, to 75 bucks. Some places had 75 plus a $25 gift card or whatnot. I still thought that was too high, to be honest with you. I thought it needed to go below. I said if it goes, down to 70 or 60, then I'll think about it and want to see what the hacking scene has done. Some time has passed. They have dropped it down to 60 pretty much collectively everywhere. And I'm assuming, I haven't heard anywhere that this thing is EOL'd. So I cannot imagine that they are producing these things anymore because they've been widespread, getting horrible reviews, not selling. The retailers are just trying to get rid of them. And I cannot imagine that they're going to bring the price back up on them. So also then as a collector, I think, well, there could be a pretty limited print run. I don't know how many of these these made. They may have made a crap load, and that could be the problem. But they're not going to be producing these things for a while. So the fact that also that I've looked into the hacking scene, and it's looked pretty easy to hack it. So I just thought to myself, for 60 bucks, it looks cool. The hardware of it is pretty sound, meaning that like it's pretty good quality. It looks cool. At worst, if I brick it, I can sit on the shelf and it looks nice. So, but to be honest with you, I don't really play the NES or Super NES ones. I did not hack those. I was satisfied with the games on there, so I just have no intention of really hacking those. I use a Raspberry Pi if I need to emulate anything. But I figured for 60 bucks it was worth a try. So I went and picked it up, and on the way home, I'm just looking at the box, just looking at the games on the back. And it just was a reminder again of, yeah, they're bad. They really are. There's nothing on there I really want to play, like maybe like 2 or 3 games, like Rayman, but I have that already. So it's like, what? Then I get home, and I hook it up and start playing through, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to hook this thing. But if I can't hack this thing, I'm never going to use this thing again. So then I started the hacking process, and I'll put some link in this description. There was a couple tutorials that I watched that were very helpful, kind of a combination of the both, kind of helped me walk it through. The one I'm going to link up here, it will be the one that was most helpful, but I'll put in the description below both of them. But basically they point you towards a GitHub page to where you use a software called BleemSync, and then you're going to use that software. But it really took me only about maybe 10 to 20 minutes to actually hack it. I ran into some issues to where I was not having all my files named properly or in the exact right format that they needed to be in. But once I figured that out, then every game that I've uploaded has worked very good. I've had one exception, which is the original Tomb Raider, which actually comes out, plays all the cutscenes, and then when I go to start the game, it just kind of blacks out. Um, but everything else has worked wonderfully. I mean, I've had issues with some games not being able to get them in a certain format that I need them in, but if as long as I have games in the exact format, then you're good to go with. So this is it's like the same interface that you'll have um, normally, but like I said, when you boot off of the USB stick, then it's going to come the same way, except for you'll have whatever games are on your USB stick. So I'll kind of give you a just brief overview of what I have. So I got Mega Man X4, uh, Iron Hander, Crash Team Racing, Raystorm, Tomb Raider. This is the only one right here that like does not work. It'll boot up fine, but then it just kind of like when you go to like get through like all the initial cutscenes and go to start your first game, then it kind of just crashes. Tombe, NBA Showtime, NBA on NBC, Spyro the Dragon, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Gran Turismo 2, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Dino Crisis 2, Tomb Raider: Last Revelation. This one for some reason works fine. I don't know what's the issue with the other one. And then Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and then Crash Bandicoot. So this is probably this is kind of ideal for like what I would want. Um, it's like if these games, if like it basically came with these 20 games on there, I would have dropped $100 for it, you know. So like games like Tomba or like this is like a $100 game. A lot of a couple of these games on here are pretty expensive. Like Raystorm is pretty expensive. Iron Hander is pretty expensive. So you got some games that are kind of not all these. Some of these are actually pretty cheap. But I actually think, and another thing is, I actually think the emulation runs pretty well to be honest with you. But go ahead and you can. I think Spyro. Try to get in one that starts up pretty fast. But yeah, I'd say like it took me to get this far to get 15 games on here. It did take me a couple hours, and not because, like I said, the actual getting the BleemSync software set up was actually like extremely fast. It just took me long to get all the files in the right name, to get everything, then to get the right name on all the files, and that process is pretty tedious. So just keep that in mind. It is pretty easy to do it, but it can be quite tedious. All right, in the world of dragons. All right, you gotta skip over this. And now we're loading again. The adventure begins. Yeah, also just keep in mind that this is not 100%. There is a possibility that you will brick your system. So like I said, I took that. That was completely. I knew that was definitely a possibility when I buy it. That's why I was, at $60. It was a good price point for me because it was worth the risk to brick it to get this to work. And as you can see, it actually runs pretty good. I'm actually been very pleasantly surprised with how good these games run. I mean, they don't run. Uh, they run as they run as good as they can run. I'm sure like the actual original games may run a tad bit, and I mean I'm not really a PS1 connoisseur, as I've probably made that pretty obvious during this video. But I mean these games run I think fine. I've been impressed with how good the emulation is. I mean it's not wonderful. It's probably not as good as it could be, but I think it's all right. If you're used to emulating the PS1 and have more experience with it, you may say that this is not good emulation, but I think it's fine. But then you can just kind of quit out. You push select and triangle, and also select and triangle will bring up like your emulation options, but you can just exit out of this. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So on Dino Crisis 2, this was like basically like my save state. So I was right in here, like I can press like triangle and select, and I can come in here to my PCSX menu and then set state or save state, sorry, and you basically have all these slots where you can save your state. Yeah, that's it for the most part, guys. Like I said, I've been pretty happy with it. I'd say, and it kind of depends as far as like for the $60. I personally still don't think like the games they have on here for me. I wouldn't pay $60 for the games that they have on here, because there's maybe like 2 or 3 games, maybe 4 of those games I think are even worth playing, and that's kind of pushing it, to be honest with you. But that's just my preference. There may be games on here that you may like half the games, or maybe 5 or 6 or 7 games. At that point, then maybe it actually is worth it to you. But for me personally, it was not. I just was not happy with the games that were on there. And then as far as the hacking, it depends on how much time you want to put into it. Like I said, I got this far, 15 games, and I really don't hack much stuff. I mean, I have a Raspberry Pi, but I really don't, and I have it up and running, but I don't like emulating much. I like using the original hardware. That's why Original Console Gamer is a channel. But I do emulate sometimes just to see if maybe I want to buy a game. If there's a game that's kind of a little bit pricey, I like to emulate it just to see if I even want to buy it. It's a good preview or test for me sometimes. And I don't even do that all the time. A lot of times I have a pretty good idea if I want to buy the game or not. But it's not that difficult. It's tedious. There's nothing to get to this point was difficult. Everything was pretty easy. It's just tedious, just getting files in the right format, getting the right name on them, and stuff like that. So I mean, that's about it. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. If you've picked up the PlayStation Classic, if you're happy with it, if you're not, just what you're feeling in general about it, or if you think that you're going to pick one up for $60 and just try to hack it. But yeah, let me know your impressions of it if you have one, and what you've been doing with yours. What games do you have on? This is pretty ideal as what my top 10 or 15 games would be. There's a couple of ones I could probably switch this out for maybe 3 or something like that. But I was just trying to get just a basis games on here. But I'll leave a roll now, and I'll leave some game. I'll just leave a little snippet of gameplay for each game that I do have on here, just so you can kind of check out the emulation. And that's it, guys. I appreciate y'all watching the video. Make sure you subscribe and like it if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.